Welcome to Fun Palais Podcast, where we are unpacking opinions and changing destinations. I am your host, Shirley Altador, where each week we will chat about how to rise strong out of all types of obstacles that come with relationships. Through personal life experiences and discussions ranging from infidelity, trust, forgiveness, sex, heartbreak, self-love, and so much more. I am passionate and obsessed to provide guidance to every woman to create a better life. Let's dive in, pull up a seat, make sure you're cozy, and get ready to be challenged and encouraged while you learn. With me, your virtual girlfriend. With the infidelity. So I guess to talk about the infidelity, how long did it last? Did you confess to your husband or did your husband find out at the time?
Yeah, no, it started small, which I think it usually does, right? Like
It does.
somebody pays attention to you and you're like, "Oh, hey, like what's
Yep.
up?" And then
I've
and
been
then
down
you
that path, girl. Both
Mhm.
hubby and I have been down that path. So I know I
Yeah.
totally can resonate where you're coming from. It starts small.
And like I said, not even intentionally. Like I wasn't out there being like with the intention of, okay, I'm going to go out, I'm going to meet a guy and I'm going to start a relationship with him. Like that was not the intention at all. I legit was out at a Christmas party for my like company that I was working with a bunch of
Mm-hmm.
other girls, went out and a guy was like just talking to me like very nicely and just like, "You're so beautiful," of course, and I was like, "Thanks so much," and I think when you don't love yourself, any sort of outside validation, it just fills your cup, like, so
Yep.
immediately,
Yep.
because you almost need that to, like, feel good enough, and so it really did start out so small, and so because hubby was gone all the time, it was easy for me to like meet up with girlfriends and maybe like go out and then just like happen to let this guy know that I was out as well. And then we would like talk and it just starts with talking, right? Because when you're
Mm-hmm.
talking to somebody, you build a relationship and you like them and you trust them. And so it started off extremely small and I remember just not even thinking at first of anything. It was just like having a friend to talk to about it. And then it started to be like, I kind of like him. Like I like him. I find him attractive. So it was like little things like that. And I remember I specifically told my husband at the time, I said, I am getting my cup filled by and not my boob cups, but my cup, right? I was getting it filled, this attention by outside people, like whether I was going to the gym or whether people that were out, when I was out. And I said, it's making me nervous. It's making me scared. I was like, because I'm not feeling that from you. Like, I don't get that from you. And I was like, I wish that you were home more so that we could like build a relationship. Because listen, we've been married for a year, but you've been gone the entire time. So like ultimately him and I didn't really like build a firm foundation from the beginning anyway, because he was gone for weeks at a time. I had a baby. So it was just like he was a partner when he was there, but then
When he
not. It was
wasn't there, I get what you're saying.
so we
Yeah.
were living like this separate life that I still feel like I wasn't, we didn't
Mm-hmm.
really have a firm connection in the first place. Not blaming it on that. It was
Mm-hmm.
definitely, I've said it before, it was definitely because I didn't have any self love. But I think that that was like a instigate or like a piece of the puzzle. And so I brought this to his attention and basically what I kept hearing from him and everybody else was it's just a sacrifice now. We're just sacrificing this now so that like eventually, like when I get a promotion, I won't have to be traveling. So we're just sacrificing our time together now so that later we will have that time together. And I just remember being like, okay, like I get it. Like I understand it logically, but subconsciously I didn't know how to scream out like you know what I mean? Like what I was feeling inside, I didn't know how to voice it. And so
Wrong choice of words. I don't like those words. And if I was
Mhm.
in your situation, I would have heard that and been like, all right, whatever. Like, when was somebody going to tell you, Kristjana,
Yeah.
it starts with you.
Mm-hmm.
Girl, why does your cup feel empty? Was
Right.
anybody talking to you like that?
No. Because I
Like
should have been
those
getting
words you
it.
just told me don't sound like nothing to me. They just
Mm-hmm.
sound like you just looking for something to say, but they're
Mm-hmm.
not resonating with me.
Mm-hmm. Right. I'm just like, I really wish that, yeah, somebody at the time would have just taken the time to be like, let's do some like inner work. Like, let's figure that out. And that would have been a
Yes.
really nice way to utilize my time while my husband was
Yes.
gone, right? Instead of just being like, I'm lonely, I'm sad, I'm scared, I hate myself. There was so many things
Or
going
just be
on.
patient. We're sacrificing now. That sounds like a whole bunch of mumbo jumbo. You still could send me a hey babe text. That doesn't justify. Girl, we know how it is now. But this is the being intentional in a relationship because I
Mm-hmm.
remember my therapist telling me all three parties play a role.
Mm,
The first time my therapist told me that, I was like, you're a goddamn fool. I don't play any role in this infidelity. And it took me a few years to realize, yes, I do play a role because I was not being intentional in my relationship. So at
yeah.
some point, your husband was not being intentional. He was intentional when he was there, but when he was gone, he completely disconnected. And then the problem started with you. Everyone played a role.
Right, right. And it was just like where we were at, like in our own lives and on our own journey. And I totally get that, but I'm just like, yikes, man. So, anyways, that was kind of the first discussion about it. And then I ended up um alone with this dude, and we ended up like making out. And I ended up telling my husband probably 2 days later because I just couldn't hold it in. And I was just like, I'm scared. Like it used to just be that I would, just enjoy somebody telling me that I was pretty, like at the gym. And I was like, and now it's turning into me like building a relationship. And I like expressed all of this to him. Like, I was like, it's
Mhm.
scaring me. Like, why am I like getting my cup filled from somebody else? Like, I was just like trying to figure it out. And I think, because he worked for his dad, and he approached his dad and I think had like asked if there was any way that he could like find a job closer to home or whatever. And I think his dad was like, "No, there's really not." And
Okay, so he did try to mitigate the situation.
mhm.
Okay.
And but nothing happened, like nothing changed. And it when was it? Probably 3 months later, I was like, I think that I want a divorce. Like I was like, I don't feel like something's wrong and I need to like find myself, and I don't think I can find myself in this relationship. I'm feeling like uneasy. I don't know. I was just like trying to voice it, but I didn't know like what, I couldn't find the words. And he was like, "Oh my gosh, no. Like we you don't need to find you we don't need to get a divorce." And this was just kind of like a conversation that we had been having, right? While he was still
Hmm.
traveling. Girl. Oh, okay. This next part, this was tough. So remember I told you that I had become an aerialist,
Yes.
and there was like a group of us. There was probably like 6 or 7 of us who were like really close. We would perform on the weekends. The woman who owned the aerialist gym, I mean, she wasn't a friend, she was just the owner and she was my employer, right? Like she would hire me to perform and that was that. I didn't really have a relationship with her. She was about 7 or 8 years older than me. She had married somebody who was my age. And I was out with one of the aerialist friends one night, and he was there because, hi, hello, we were all young and wanting to be out. And he was like, "Hey, girls," because he saw us all the time. He saw us and he was like, "Oh my gosh, like add me on Snapchat, like blah, 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 whatever." Like, and he was cute and fun and we loved him, whatever. We saw him quite frequently. I didn't think anything of it. Later that night, he like sends me a Snapchat and was like, "Listen, I think you and I are going through like the same thing." Like he was like, "You have emptiness in your eyes." And he was like, "I want to talk to you like about it." He's like, "Cuz I think I can relate to you." And I was like, "Okay, sure. Let's chat."
Uh huh.
And so he was like basically divulging what he was going through. Like he was like, "My wife is constantly gone because she is managing this gym, right?" He was like,
Hmm.
"She doesn't care about me really. Like she's just kind of doing her own shit. I'm alone. We just had a baby." Like him and I had a lot of similarities. And I was like, yes, I feel that. And him and I would just talk about that because we could relate
You
to
could
each other.
relate. Yep.
And it became, and he was extremely into music. I was into music. So it just became like this friendship where it was like, hey, this is a really cool new like band that came out. You should listen to it. And, but then of course it became like us talking a lot, like daily. And it was never inappropriate or in the sense of like, hey, what's up? I like you. It didn't turn into that
Your
yet.
weakness didn't make you realize. I realize it's the weakness doesn't make you realize it's approaching inappropriate. But
Oh, yeah.
even now when I think about it, if I look back then, I'm like, those conversations didn't need to be had. I
Didn't
was,
need
oh,
to be had.
yeah, didn't need to be had. I was in a relationship. Although
Mm.
they were innocent, it was the buildup.
Oh, it
And
was
you were so
totally
weak, your mind wasn't right, so you didn't think anything of it. But
right.
that's how innocent it starts. It starts small. That's how innocent it is.
Oh, totally. And this was, I mean, I wouldn't say I knew him, but I knew him in the sense of like I had seen him. I had like watched him for the last year. And so I was like, he's a safe dude. Like I feel
Mm-hmm.
safe around him. Like I feel like this isn't necessarily bad. Was it inappropriate? 100%. Um, and it slowly turned into that. It slowly turned into like, I feel so lonely, like at my house. And I'm like, me too. Oh my
Wait,
God.
did you guys meet up for dinner?
Oh, like he ended up when, and what's kind of fucked up about this is another one of my like aerialist friends. We were super close at the time, and she was over, and I'm like, Tim is because I told her like what was going on, and I was like, he's messaging me, like he wants to come over, and she's like, yeah, like have him come over. He's fun, and I'm like, he's totally fun because he was, and not even in the sense that he was like a funny dude, like he wasn't necessarily funny. He was just like he was good looking and he was very like he was athletic. So he was just very like he was just a male presence, you know. Having dudes around is fun. And so we were like, yeah, come over. He came over, was over for like a couple hours, didn't really think anything of it. Now I'm like, oh my God. Like if I was a mom at home with my kids and my husband pieced out for 2.5 hours, where the fuck is he at? And I was allowing him to be at my home. Like, I just am like, how did I think that that was okay? Other than the fact that I really am like, I love building relationships with people and being that person that somebody can turn to. However, there's a line, and like that line had been crossed when I had said, "Sure, come over to my house on a Sunday afternoon when you should be home with your family." And even if you're not home with your family, you shouldn't be at my fucking house.
But
So,
the woman you are today, you realize that. And you will
mhm.
make sure moving forward in your next relationships that things like this don't happen because you will maintain healthy boundaries.
Oh, exactly.
This
Boundaries.
is, yes,
Boundaries.
this is
It's where it
how
starts.
it all starts. And we
Mhm,
don't realize it. The innocence. You talk to somebody enough, their whole appearance going to start to change. You're going to be like, oh, you're not so
mhm.
bad. Okay. Yeah, I can work with you. All
Oh,
right. Yeah.
well, because
Especially
you
if you're
feel
at a weak point in your life. We're talking about if you're at a weak point. If you're in a
yeah.
really healthy state, your relationship is good and healthy and communication is great. No, you're going to turn that off real quick. What
Oh,
you need to come to
immediately.
my house for?
Exactly.
Mm-mm. My husband not going to be home. Nope. You know what I'm saying? That's what the response
Yes.
should be. My husband not going to be home. Let me check with my husband. And those are just like, no, you don't need to come to my house. First of all, you a male.
Yes. Huge
For
red flag,
what?
like immediately. Huge
Exactly.
red flag. I'd have been like, Absolutely not. See you later." There would have even been no like exchanging of Snapchat information ever. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
No,
I
thank you.
totally agree with you. Okay, so now dude
So
comes over.
he comes over, and that was with somebody there, right? Whatever.
Okay.
And
That don't mean nothing, girl.
so, but I was like, I'm being safe, right? Somebody's here. Somebody is visually here to see it. This escalated so quickly in the sense that, like, 2 days later, he was like, hey, my family owns property. Do you want to go four wheeling? Like, my wife fucking hates to be in the wild. And I was like, yes, I grew up in the desert. We always were four wheeling. I would love to go four wheeling. A, because you're hot, and B, because I love four-wheeling and I'm alone. Yes, I want to go. So
Let me ask you a question, and I want to bring this up. Did you tell your husband this man was coming over?
I told my husband that I was talking to him, and my husband was like, "This is a bad idea." And I said,
Okay,
and
so your husband already had mentioned to you this is not a good thing, but
mhm.
he didn't become all crazy about it.
No,
Okay.
and so I was
But
like, "Let's test it. Let's
okay.
see." 'Cause, like,
But
obviously, I'm not upsetting you.
gotcha. Okay. So I see what you're saying. The whole time you're trying to communicate to your husband, but the way he's responding to you, you're like, you don't really care.
Yeah.
Okay. So you didn't mention to your husband that a dude was coming over that day.
Oh, I did. I said, "I'm gonna go four-wheeling with Tim." And he was like, "Okay, like, does like what?" And I was like, "I'll call you after."
Okay. Okay. So you were telling him, and your husband was letting you know, no, 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 but you weren't listening.
I mean, I wasn't divulging that I thought Tim was hot and enjoyed spending time with him. You know
No,
what I
true,
mean?
but I know, but now when you think back, you knew the thoughts that were going through his mind.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like, I don't like this.
Mhm.
Why are you going to four wheel with Tim and I'm not present?
Mhm. But I honestly at
Mm-hmm.
this point was like, A, I had already mentioned to him that I wanted a divorce. I was trying, I think, subconsciously trying to figure out how to get there.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I wanted company
Mm-hmm.
and also didn't really care because when you don't love yourself, you really don't care like who you're hurting.
Mm-hmm.
You just don't
Exactly.
really.
You
So
don't, and oh, girl, you hit the nail. You don't, when you don't love yourself, you don't care who you're hurting. I
mm-mm.
like that. I'm probably going to steal that.
Yeah, do steal it because it's so true. And I think so many people can relate to that. Like in your, when you are just being so destructive, you don't love yourself and you really don't care who's in your path. Like this looking back, I'm like, I was hurting so many people in this and I didn't care because I couldn't see it. I couldn't see the lasting effects that it would have. I was just thinking,
Exactly.
this is what's making me happy right this second. Fuck all of you. And I'm just going to do this anyway. So I did it. I went. We had a great day. I felt sick to my stomach because I knew that I was doing something that was I'm now crossing a boundary. Like before that I was like this is kind of crossing a boundary but not yet. And after that day I was like this is crossing a boundary. Like I felt icky inside.
Got it.
Um he dropped me off at home and then god it was probably like the next day. This must have been on a weekend. So that must have happened like on a Saturday. He asked me if I wanted to like get dinner or lunch or whatever the next day and I was like sure, whatever. So we go and get dinner. We come to back to my house and we're just like talking um and then it kind of starts to get like us our conversation is like I'm lonely like I you know sex never happens like all of that and so we like started to like kiss and then I remember both of us were like we got to like nah let's pull away like this we got to stop this and he left and I was like oh shit but I didn't feel like I wanted it to stop like I was like I don't really want this to stop. And he had even messaged me like a little bit later and was like, oh my God, like I can't stop thinking about you, blah, 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 whatever. About 3 hours later, I'm sitting on my couch and I get a call from his wife. And I knew like immediately that I was
What'd she call
no,
you for? Wait, did y'all have sex? What'd
no,
she call you for? What she call? Let me hear what she calling you for.
because she was like, I see your number in my husband's phone. Like, why the fuck are you guys communicating? Which is a legitimate question, right? Why am I communicating with her husband? B, she was like, you are no longer like a part of my studio. I will, like, I am going to trash your name. Like, no one is ever going to, uh, want to do anything with you ever. She was like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm calling your husband. I was like, my husband actually knows about this. Like, you're more than welcome to chat with him. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
but he's known, that I've been hanging out with Tim. I was like, that's kind of a bummer that he didn't let you know. Like, I'm not in charge of what he divulges to you. I was like, but my
Mm-hmm.
husband has known about this. And I was like, here's his number. You're more than welcome to call him. And she was just like, I can't believe you. Like, you fucking whore. I know you guys slept together. Like, it was like, oh my God. And I was like, listen,
So you
I put,
hadn't slept together. Was she
hadn't,
prying through his phone?
I, I have no fucking clue.
Oh, you have no idea why that call.
He was being a shady motherfucker, like, to her.
Okay.
And I'm sure that he
Okay.
was like doing other shit on,
I
like,
see.
you know what I mean? He was just being shady all in general. And I just happened to be like the tip of the fucking iceberg. Like, shit
Probably.
must have been going down at their house. And she said, and your fucking, both of your stories are exactly the same. So I know that you guys must have like rehearsed. And I was like, bitch, because it's true. Like, we didn't rehearse anything. This is like legit what happened.
Oh, okay.
Um,
All right.
and
Okay.
so
So
I was
now
like,
wife
I
is
was like,
upset.
yeah, wife's upset. I was like, I have nothing to lose at this point. Like, you're already kicking me out of your gym. You're already basically saying that you're going to trash my name. I was like, why would I keep lying to you if we really did sleep together? I was like, I have nothing to lose at this point. Like, you know what I mean? And she was just like, I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to find out. And I was just like, okay.
Okay.
I didn't really know what else to say to her. So I
Okay.
called my husband, told him about it, and he was just like, I told you that this was a slippery slope. I told you that this was going to happen. And I was like, yeah, okay. I didn't really know what else to say. So through this all, right, I was super close friends with all of these girls. None of them reached out. They completely just like, nope, we're done. None of them wanted to hear my side of the story. She told
Did you
them,
ever sleep with the guy?
never slept with him.
This is
Never.
the infidelity that,
No, no, no. Well, this is the pre-infidelity, right? This is like the
oh,
my step into it. But this was like a huge fucking thing. Like, it turned into something that I was like, I didn't even sleep with this guy, and I'm getting like the same shit that had happened like in the Mormon church almost. Like, you do one thing and it's like you're ostracized. I'm gonna have everybody hate you now. Like, it was almost like I was
mm-hmm.
reliving, but for something totally different. And I was like,
Exactly.
I didn't even do anything. Like, I talked to him and I kissed him like a
But
fucking kiss.
let me ask, now do you realize exactly what you did?
Oh, 100%. 100%.
Now
But
you
back then I was
realize,
like,
like, back then, of course, you wouldn't
mm-hmm.
have recognized it then in the state that you were in. But now, with maturity and growth, you realize why she
Oh,
was upset
oh,
legitimately.
uh-huh.
Because why you contacting my husband as much as you are?
Oh, yeah. What I would have those exact same concerns
Yes.
now. Like,
That's how I
it,
am now. Like, if
mm-hmm.
you look at him too long, it's kind of like, I don't say nothing, but I'm watching your eyes watch him. You looking too long, too long.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
watch something else.
Uh-huh. And I get it. I totally do. And I just remember her saying, like, as another woman, like, how dare you? And I was just like, I wasn't, this is then, right? When I was
Mm-hmm.
23 or 24. I was just thinking, God,
I
I
didn't do
wasn't doing anything
anything.
to you. Like, I was talking to him. Like, he
Yeah.
feels lonely because you're so mean. And I was just like, God, it was just such a weird feeling to be like completely like, again, a huge S on my shoulder for some shit I didn't even do. Like, I was like, you're saying that I slept with your husband. I never did, but yet this is like what's being said.
Exactly.
And so that was like the whole kind of what brought my marriage to a head, because she told my husband, she's like, you guys better get divorced. She's awful. And I think my husband was just like, listen, like, we'll deal with our shit. You deal with your shit. That's that. And like, it really was, it was whatever. But I told my husband, I was like, we can't, I think that that's where he finally was like, okay, I need to be home. We need to be together. We need to be working on like our relationship, our marriage, and we need to figure some shit out. And I was like, yes. How long have I been asking for this? For like a year. And so we decided, I grew up in Arizona. We decided to move back to Arizona for a little bit so that we could like be together. He was going to get a different job. And I said, listen, so much shit has already happened. I don't even really know if I like you. You probably don't like me. Like, I don't know. I was like, I'm not saying that us moving to Arizona is going to like fix our relationship, but maybe it will give it like a chance,
Okay.
maybe. So we decided to up and move, and it was just more validation. Like I had already been out, probably even before the Tim situation. And that's probably why I let the Tim situation get to the point where it was at, is because I had already removed myself. I had already wanted to be done way before that ever happened. So I was just kind of like, whatever, like we'll see. So we'd been living in Arizona, and this is when the real fidelity happened, is that I had been saying, I don't know, I really don't feel like this is like working. I want a divorce. And he was like, we're not getting divorced. Like, we will work through this. And I was like, what is it going to take for you to divorce me? And he said, it would probably have to be like you cheating on me. And I was like, great. And so I went to a Christmas party for one of my bosses, and I ended up having sex with some other guy. And I came home, and probably, I don't know, a couple days later, because at first I was just going to not talk about it. And a couple days later, I was saying the same thing. I want a divorce. I want to be apart. I want to separate. And he said no. And I said, I cheated on you and I slept with somebody else. And he was like, is this somebody, like, was it these other dudes, right? From the year before, like the guy you kissed or Tim? And I was like, no, like this was just some guy.
A
And
random person.
a random person.
Did you
And
intentionally do that? Be like, I need a divorce, so I'm going to do this, so I have a reason?
I think that I used alcohol as a blame
A
or
way
a
in.
crutch,
Mm-hmm.
a way in,
Yep.
because I knew that if I was going to drink, I would lose. I already didn't have boundaries. We can see that, right? From my past
Mm-hmm.
stories. I didn't have
Yep.
boundaries. So when alcohol was involved, I use that as a I don't really have boundaries. Um, and so absolutely, like I intentionally got drunk knowing that I would then not care as much and I could just drown it all out and do it without feeling as bad. And so and at that point I think I had turned off my emotions to even feeling it because I felt so low, just like that book I read, right, when I was 18, that you are like scum of the earth, right? Like your sin is next to murder. So at this point, I feel like I'm a piece of shit anyway. Like I'm not really caring if I just do one extra thing
How many years
to
ago
stay
was
there.
this?
When was this? 7, 8 years ago.
7, 8 years ago, you
Hmm.
confessed to, I want a divorce, I'm sleeping with him. And it
Hmm.
was easier for you to sleep with somebody because that's what you said your husband would take for him to leave. Because if you served him divorce papers, I'm understanding he wouldn't sign. Or if you separated yourself from the situation, would he not realize, okay, she's serious about this? Because I feel like we all have more control than we play we do. But
Hmm.
instead of you looking at other positive options, I always
Hmm.
like to say, as cheaters, let's just do the most cowardice thing. I'm
Yep.
going to sleep with somebody. I'm going to break your heart because that's just easier. Let me just do that. Instead of just maybe removing myself from the situation in a healthy way.
Mm. I didn't have I didn't have the mindset or the tools to even do that. I was trying to do anything to like A, not feel it because
Uh
I
huh.
didn't fucking want to face it.
Yep.
And I wanted to hurt him so bad that he would realize that I was a shit person so that he wouldn't want to be with me anymore because that to me seemed like the easiest possible thing, whereas that was like the most toxic way. And just as me as a human being, I would never intentionally hurt somebody else, but I did. And I hurt a lot of other
Now,
people. Hmm.
now you realize this because you're a
Yeah.
healthier version of you.
Oh,
So
yeah.
now, after you tell him, I slept with somebody, I'm assuming he gets the ball rolling even faster. Or does he still want to work it out?
He still wanted to work it out. He went and kind of like meditated for a little bit, came back and was
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't feel like you did this. Like he knew me a little bit better than I would like to say that he did, but he was like, I feel like you did this like as
And
like
you did. It seems as though,
mhm,
from what you're telling me here, you did do it intentionally. It wasn't,
totally.
You weren't in love. And most people that you cheat on with, you're really, truly not in love with them. You are in love with the situation and the feeling and everything
Mm-hmm.
else, but time tells a lot. And you
Mm-hmm.
realize you weren't in love with the person. You were just in love with that situation. That
Mm.
situation felt good and comfortable.
And you know
But
what? In my circumstance, I'm like, the situation didn't even feel good, right? The sex wasn't
no,
even that great because I was drunk and I was doing it because I just wanted to be able to say, I'm a
I
shit
cheated.
person, leave me. Yes. And like on a deeper level, I really did feel that. Like I am not worthy. I am not good enough. And those were the thoughts that I was 70,000 times a day in my head telling myself. Like I didn't even have the brain capacity to think like a healthy person because I wasn't living as a healthy person.
Because you left your unhealthy teenage child years, entered into a relationship already unhealthy. So that didn't make the situation any better. And that's
Mm-mm,
the problem. So
totally.
now, how long after that situation, because your husband wanted to work it out, did it officially become like he realized this is not happening? Did you cheat again?
Well, we started living separately. So we moved
Oh,
back. Yep, because we were like, okay, if we're going to separate, we need help. Our baby was 2.5 years old. We needed help, and my mom worked 12 hours. She still does work 12
she was
hours.
still working. Gotcha.
Right, still does, and probably still will forever and ever. But she couldn't have
Don't
helped
tell
us.
me you had to turn to the bishop and his wife.
Girl, no. At this point, we were like, no more bishops. But his mom was extremely helpful. His mom has always
Okay,
been a
good,
stay-at-home mom. So his mom
good.
really stepped in because at this point, when you separate, it's not like I wasn't relying on his income anymore to like
No, you had to go.
I needed now to support myself. So I was working full time. He was working full time. We were trying to figure our shit out. His mom helped a lot with our baby. And through that year, I came from having no boundaries. So yet again, there was still no boundaries. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and we would still hang out. We were still trying to figure out whether or not we were going to keep working together, whether we were not, what even was it? Like I think it was just a lot of trial and error. And
Mm-hmm.
several months in, I think I bought my house in October. So we separated in January. And by October, I was buying my own house. And he at one point was like, maybe we should like try again. And I was like, sure, maybe let's do it. And I think he could tell she's still not like willing or ready. Like I had been trying to do inner work and I was just still trying to escape what I had been running from. I was still trying to drown out all emotion that I was feeling. So I was like, sure. And he was like, actually, I don't think so. And
He's
he
very
started,
mature.
maybe. Yeah, sure.
She
We'll
said
go with
maybe,
that.
yeah, sure. Just like, so he sensed that from you? Because even me, I'm like, is she really ready? And you were like, yeah, I'm just going to say yes. Yeah, sure, let's work it out.
Mhm.
I
I
just,
think
yeah.
I think that he wanted that stability so bad. And yeah, maybe he could tell that it wasn't me.
Yeah.
Even though he wanted it to be me. So maybe
Mm-hmm.
maybe he was mature in that sense.
Mature enough in that decision where he was setting a boundary for you.
Yeah.
Instead, you know what I'm saying? He was
Mhm.
setting a boundary for you because you couldn't set your own boundary, girl.
Oh yeah, I didn't want to. Like I wasn't ready. I didn't even know what setting boundaries looked like or would feel like because I had lived with them without them my entire life. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't even know what they were. So I was like, "What? What's a boundary? Like why would you ever set, limitations on yourself? You could feel different tomorrow." But he started seeing his now wife maybe like 2 months later and, they're married now and that's great. But for me, it probably took another, like, year and a half, and then
Good.
I was like, "Okay," because I remember when they got engaged, I didn't hear it from them, and I heard it from a best friend. She called me and was like, "Oh my god, are you okay?" And I was like, "What do you mean? Like, I'm totally fine. What are you talking about?" And she was like, "Oh, I just saw, that they're engaged now." And I was like, "What?" Like, I had no idea. And, his sister messaged me and was like,
Everybody
"Hey."
contacting you.
And at this point, I'm like, "Time to drink again. Let's just drown it all out." And so I went home, and I think that I probably drank like 2 bottles of wine in the matter of like 2 hours,
Oh
just trying to
gosh.
just like I just wanted to not feel, because
What were
every
you upset
time
about?
I was sad that I
You
couldn't.
fucked someone on him. What were you upset about, girl?
I think that I was sad that I didn't know how to get my shit together. Like, there was this piece that I
Ah,
had, this family that I had that was
and you
that was
messed it up.
here, and I fucked it up, and I didn't know
Yeah.
how to fix it. And I knew that I wasn't going to, or maybe didn't even want to necessarily with him, but I was like, I am a fucking mess. Like, even now, like in that time, I was like, what am I doing? Like, I am drinking, I'm not caring. I'm just kind of like living life, not even knowing what the fuck I'm doing. Like, I felt sad that I had it, and that I had left it, or, caused all of this chaos, and that he had found it and was happy. And I was like, what am I doing wrong to where I can't find that and keep it and have it myself? What the fuck is wrong with me? You know?
And it never dawned on you. I mean, you realized you fucked it up because your
Hmm.
husband would have been willing to work it out. Legit. That
Hmm.
man would have did whatever needed to be done to work the relationship out. But now you
Hmm.
realize that, and what he did is a prime example is I have to do what's best for myself. Do I
Hmm.
still love and care about her? Most likely, I guarantee you, you are the mother of his child. You guys
Hmm.
had something. So he most likely still does care about you, but he had to move on.
Hmm. Oh,
He could not
100%.
wrap himself around you for, and this is what a lot of us are scared to do. And we are negative about it, or we don't know how to do it. And that's why I say he was mature in a sense, like, as much as I care for this girl, I can't deal with this forever. And I have
Oh,
to move on from this. You understand?
totally.
That's what I mean by maturity.
Hmm.
I don't know the guy, and
Right.
there's always two sides to every story. So I
Totally.
guarantee you that perfection is probably no one's perfect.
Oh, yeah.
But maturity in the sense of he was honest
Hmm.
every time and told you he wanted to work it out. He wanted
Hmm.
to work it out. And at that final moment, when you're like, "Yeah, let's go." He's like, "No. No.
Hmm.
You know what? No."
And he knew. You're right. I think he
You
could
know?
see that. I mean, he was like,
Yep.
"Love you. You're gonna
But
fuck
I
shit up
can't do
again."
this. Yep. You will
Hmm.
break my heart, and I don't want to go down that road.
Oh,
That's what I
yeah.
mean by maturity. Like he
Hmm.
was able to realize all this
Mm.
and not go back into that same toxic situation again.
Yeah.
And even through the whole situation, he was mature. You calling him to telling him what you're going to do. Like to me, I can't even like, you going where? You
Mm.
going horseback riding with who? What? I would be frantic over the phone.
Mm.
Frantic. So
Yeah.
that's what I mean by level of maturity. So now
And I
he's
really
married.
I
Huh?
love what you're saying. I love what you're saying, though, because I don't think I've ever looked at that situation and thought, how mature of him. Like,
Yeah, because, yeah,
I remember looking at him and being like,
you're an asshole.
well, and not even that, but somebody without a backbone, like somebody that didn't have, God, what am I trying to say? Like somebody who was almost weak for
Did you feel
not.
as though he didn't fight enough?
Not that. I think that a lot of our marriage felt like it wasn't just him and I. It was him and I and his parents and what they thought and what they said. And
Uh
so it
huh.
was a lot of like, if you wanted to change the situation, or if you wanted something to be different, even from the beginning of me coming to you and being like, I want you home, let's please work together. Like, why wasn't he like, let's figure this out? Like, I don't need to be working for my dad. I want to
But you
be.
did say he did.
Oh, that he asked his dad? Yeah, eventually, and then his
Yeah.
dad was like, "No."
No. I feel
Mhm.
like, and this is, we have to sometimes, it's hard to give our partners credit for the little
Mm-hmm.
things that they do, you know? But,
Yeah,
you said it too, girl. It all starts with you. You were so
totally
damaged on
does.
the inside that there was a part of you that really didn't want to take full accountability for the fact that you were the source of the problem. Let's look at the positives here. You were a
Mm,
stay-at-home mom. You didn't have to work. This man was taking care of everything. It doesn't justify what you were doing,
mm,
but you were unhappy. Unhappy why? Because, I don't know, maybe he wasn't texting you enough. Maybe he wasn't calling you. And these are like simple changes that maybe if he had did, as soon because when he was home, you said he was present.
yeah.
Things were fine. But as soon as he left, it gave you a sour taste in your mouth. Maybe he
When I
needed to
think
text you or call you more or do some video chats or make you feel like, okay, I'm still present even though I'm miles away.
when I think that too, like just like anybody, right? When he was on the road, he was working like 6 days a week. So when he
Mm-hmm.
came home, that was like his time to also like decompress. So he
Mm-hmm.
wanted to stay at home and like game and just like decompress. And I was like, you've been gone. Like, I want to date you all weekend long. Like, let's like
Mm-hmm.
do things together. And so I think that there was not really ever a time to truly like sit and connect and talk about everything because he was like, I'm so tired. I'm so glad to be home, but I just want to like lay here. And I was like, let's like do things that we love together. And that just wasn't there. But 100%, I was just it was everything to do with what was going on inside of me. And yeah, a little
Mm-hmm.
bit of what was happening on the outside, but 90% of what was going on the inside.
Inside of you.
Like I said earlier, I could have married anybody and the same fucking shit would have happened. I honestly don't think that there could have been anything that he did differently. Even if he would have been like, fuck you, dad, I'm going home. Like, I'm not going to work for you. We're going to figure this out. How long would have that lasted? You know what I mean?
You know, true.
How long would have I been happy? I wasn't happy on the inside. So what was the outside world going to give me for like long term? It wasn't. It Nothing could have given me that like satisfaction because I was already so unhappy with who I was. I don't know if anything on the
And
outside.
preoccupying yourself obviously turned into a negative by you getting the job.
Mhm. Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just like I really love that because I think that I needed to look at him. I've never blamed him for what happened. I've always blamed myself. Like I'm the one who
Uh-huh.
fucking did this shit.
Yeah.
Um but I didn't really ever look at him as being a mature human for it. I just looked at him as just like, mm,
No
mm,
backbone. You
because
just felt.
it wasn't ever that he was like, what can I do to like help you? Like I want to help. I want to figure this out. Like I want like it was never like that. It was just like,
I know what you
okay,
mean.
whatever
He was
you
so
need.
nonchalant to the point it was like a little disappointing.
Yeah. And I was just like, huh, that must and
Mm.
it has nothing to do with like him not caring. He obviously cared. And he obviously cared about himself enough too to be like, I can't even enter back into your shit. Like, love you. You're the mother of our daughter, but like, I can't enter into your shit anymore, which I get. But at the same time, I think that my dad, this is probably like shit that from like my past, my dad was so like this that he like never showed emotion, was just very like blah all the time. And because my dad was like that, he was also hiding a bunch of shit. And so I think that like
Mm-hmm.
subconsciously too, I was like, you don't ever do anything. Your personality is the same at all times. Like you never show emotion. What the fuck is going on? Because I'm so expressive as you can tell and very like at least I used to be very emotion driven, like very I would react, right? Instead of like working shit out, figuring it out, letting the emotion go away before I actually spoke. And that took years of like daily work. It didn't like I don't know how I could have ever married anybody at that time and had like a healthy, happy relationship. There is no fucking way. Like I was the epitome of like toxicity. And that makes me so sad now to look back and be like, Oh my
But
God.
it's all growth. You needed that learning experience. So how long has ex-husband been married now?
You know what's kind of comical is that we got married the same year, like within like a month of each other. And somebody had the audacity to be like, are you just getting married to your now husband to like in spite of? And I was like, fuck off. No.
Wait, say that again?
Me and my ex ended up getting married in the same year, like only a month apart from each other. So like he got married in June, me and Kurt got married in July.
Oh,
So
you
we
got
were only
even though you heard he got engaged. Oh, so how they were engaged, I guess, for like at least a year?
yeah, they were engaged for a lot longer than Kurt and I were. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that's why it ended up happening that a month before, then it
Yeah.
ended up being close. Okay.
Yeah.
And are you
But
still
somebody was
married?
like, "Oh yeah, yeah, yeah." Kurt and I, oh my God. Like, and I think that I but I found Kurt after I had done the fucking inner work. I had
Good.
already done it. Like I already knew who I was. I was already getting to the point of like of learning how to love myself again.
Mm-hmm.
And I had known Kurt for about a year, but when we decided to actually start dating, I had already gone through all of the like hard, shitty shit that I needed to go through by the time that
Mm-hmm.
him and I got together. But he had kind of seen me go through the personal work. So I think that it was nice to have somebody. And Kurt is the complete opposite of my ex in the sense that he's very much like, nope, like we're not going down that road, or like, nope, this is what's happening. And like, if I were
Gotcha.
to call Kurt and say, hey, I'm going to go four wheeling with Joe, our neighbor, he'd be like, fuck no.
I
This
get
is
you.
a, you know what I mean? Like, it's
This is
very
he would
different.
respond differently. Here's the thing. I don't think men ever tried to be controlling. Both the ex and the now present husband, I think it's just the delivery. The present
Oh, yeah.
husband was so nonchalant. I don't think that's a good idea. That's just the gentle version. Kirk's
Hmm.
like, you're fucking going where?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Right. He's
Totally
just totally
difference in
different.
delivery. Same thing, but
Hmm.
totally difference in delivery. Because I guarantee you, if you wanted to go, is Kirk gonna stop you? No, but Kirk gonna let you know I'm upset. I'm not happy about this, and we'll talk about it more when I get home. But go ahead, you could go. You
But
understand what I'm saying?
right, but the thing is the beautiful thing is that I have learned and set boundaries for myself that now that shit wouldn't even be a thing. Like I'd be like, Kurt, holy shit, Joe came over, wanted to ask me to go four wheeling, and I said fuck off, and I was like, can you believe that? Like what? And so I think it would be like a totally different approach and scenario now than when I
Because we
was.
know what healthy is, girl. Let me tell you something.
Mhm,
There are a select group of men that are allowed to come to my house if my husband's not home.
mhm,
That's it. There's no exceptions to the rule. If
yeah.
he's not home, or if he doesn't say, hey, Shirley, such and such is going to stop by to pick something up, there's no reason for any man to be hanging out at my house. Like,
Mhm.
legit, I don't find that to be okay at all whatsoever. If he's not family or like a real true close friend of us, and even then, like, what you here for? Like, what you,
Well,
he's not
it's just
home.
because it's because
Yeah,
what we talked about before. Like it starts when you don't even expect it or think it's going to start. It's a conversation that you have. So why is this dude coming over to sit and chat with you for hours at a time?
exactly.
Inappropriate.
Exactly. I am completely 100% and understand what you're saying, but this is how it starts. And this is
Mhm.
how it becomes unhealthy. And even if you have a male best friend, that's all good and great. But I feel like once you start a companionship with somebody,
Mm.
healthy boundaries. Your male best friend, I guess with the exception, what, if he gay? But even
Yeah.
then, he's a male. I guess if he's gay, it's okay. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Right.
But you know, and even then, like, not saying gay people wouldn't be attracted to women because there are gay people that are bisexual out there. But it's
Totally.
just like healthy boundary. If your husband's not home, I mean, it's a fine line. And I'm going to say it's a very fine line. You really, truly have to know your friend because you know your girlfriends can come over. That does that mean anything sexual wouldn't happen with your girlfriend? You don't know what life gonna take you. All I'm trying to say is a fine line, and you have to know when to draw the line and say, okay, it's time for you to go. Be able to even say that. All right, it's time for you to go.
Well,
We might as well end this.
I think that boundaries are learned too. Like my mom had zero boundaries, right? How the fuck was I going to learn them? But I think also it's like going through shit like this, like being like, okay, there's now a pattern in my life. What can I do? But it really did start. I didn't even know what boundaries were. I didn't even know what a healthy boundary was because I was
Mm-hmm.
so used to just saying yes, 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 yes all the time. Or like, why would I give up this male best friend? Like, he's been my best friend for years. What do you mean it's like inappropriate for me to be talking to him on the phone? Like, I honestly didn't get it. There
Gotcha.
was no line. But as soon as I started loving myself, figuring out like who I was, what I stood for, the values that I wanted to embody, like that person, that woman, then the boundaries came. And I was like, boundaries, they're healthy. Like, this is why I
Mm-hmm.
want them. And now I cannot even I'm setting boundaries all day, every day, with everything. My time,
What?
my
Yes.
family, everything. I'm like, I have strict fucking boundaries. Don't cross them. And my mom even knows, like, I'm like, don't ever just show up on my door. Like, I'm one of those people that's like, don't just show up at my house. I don't
I'm
like
the
that.
same. I am the
Yeah.
same. I don't like surprises at all. At all.
No.
I mean, people have rung my doorbell and I'm just like, nobody didn't tell me they was coming today.
Oh
And
yeah.
I
I'm like,
literally will not open the door. It is awful. But I'm the only one in the house. My kids are like, Mommy, the doorbell's ringing. Don't touch the door. And they know
yeah,
not to.
nope.
They're just telling me. But
Hmm.
I'm like, no one ain't called me.
Oh yeah.
I
Oh
wasn't
yeah.
contacted. Yes, girl, this is me, my spiritual sister. You get me. Don't show up
Yes.
at my house
Don't.
unexpected. I do not like
Never.
that.
So I think that like it really this entire conversation full circle comes back to starting them young, learning how to set boundaries, how to
Mm-hmm.
follow their gut, their intuition, what feels good to them. And like, I mean, I even tell my 8-year-old because she'll tell me like little scenarios that she's, with her and her friends. And I'm like, hmm, like, did that make you feel like happy inside and like excited that you like wanted to like share with somebody else? Or did it make you feel like you wanted to be secretive and like it didn't make you feel good? I'm like, that's your gut. It's your gut that's
Mm-hmm.
going to tell you like things, right? Your gut's going to always warn you that something is not for you. And she was like, oh,
Exactly.
yeah. And so I think that it just starts from such a young age teaching your kids boundaries, intuition, um how to love themselves so that so they don't have to go through fucking shit, when they're in their adulthood and they're like, why do I hate myself? I have no idea. What have I been burying inside? Oh, it was being taught to me as a child to feel shame and guilt for everything that we did. That's why. Okay.
Oh my gosh. So we have 20 minutes. We've been talking. Look, I'm going to look at my other
I'm like
recording.
2 hours.
208. I'm going to end up dividing this into part one and part two
Yeah.
because with my podcast,
Perfect.
I like to do maximum of at least an hour ish
Okay.
because I'm not Joe Rogan. I don't want to do 2 hours. I want to keep it, you know, okay, break it up into
Yeah.
parts is what I learned is
Love
good.
it.
So your dates are now going to be 2 dates, which is fine because season two is actually 2 parts. Season two
Okay.
is starting next week and
Okay.
it went over an hour and I realized breaking it up is a good thing. So
Yeah.
that's what we're going to do at yours. So yours, I told you, what I tell you, the 14th?
September
Hold on.
21st.
Thank you, girl. Let me write this down because I know I'm going to be like, so it's going to
Thank
be the
you.
21st and the 22nd because I'm going to break it up into 2 parts only because
Okay.
I don't like to create the long segments like that. Although I can, but I feel like what I realized with the podcast, you want to keep it consistent for your
Yeah, totally.
listeners. Yeah,
Totally.
which is a good thing. If I'm going to do 2 hours, I need to start off kind of with 2 hours, but that's not what I do.
No,
So
this
we're
will
going to
be
break it up.
good.
Yeah.
Thank you. I
So
am so glad that we got to talk. I'm like, I love you. I could
I
talk for
like
hours.
cord here. All right. So as we wrap up today's conversation, we had a very good talk. Even though we weren't even here today. This is so funny. I'm sorry. I had to stop. Wait, start over. I know the girl who's editing is going to be like, she's so ridiculous. Okay, let's start over. All right. So today we had a very good conversation. And before we end today, I want you to give some feedback to our listeners. Number one, what lesson did you take from your first marriage that you will not bring into your second marriage? And what advice do you have to give to women out there, regardless if they're in the Mormon community or not, or just living life, going through hardships? As we all know, relationships are not easy. I can speak for myself to know, like, it is fucking work. And it doesn't have to be bad work, but I feel like we as humans, we make it worse than it needs to be. And why do we do that? There will never really truly be an ultimate why. We're just sometimes shitty ass people. But what advice do you have to give to our listeners?
I have a couple things I want to say
Sure.
because I think in my first marriage, I went in with the expectation that my partner would like make me feel a certain way, right? I was almost putting like on him that responsibility to make me feel whole and make me feel seen and all of the things that nobody else on the outside can do for you at all. And so that's my first piece of advice is if you're going into, and this can apply to anything, a relationship with a partner or a friend or a family member, you can't have expectations that that person is going to like deliver all the things for you. You do that yourself. I think that that would have saved a lot of heartache and a lot of like misunderstanding and a lot of just disappointment that never needed to be there. So that was something that I learned going into my second marriage was Kurt is not there to like validate me, right? Like it's like a bonus when he's like, girl, you look so hot today. I love you so much. Like that, it really truly is great. And that's also my love language is words of affirmation. But I don't count on him or rely on him to like make me feel whole. Like I'm whole without Kurt. Our partnership is just a major bonus. And so that was something that truly changed, I think, the way that I look at all relationships, period. And number two, boundaries all day long. Like I think I was talking about not having boundaries growing up. My mom didn't have boundaries. She still doesn't. And I didn't even know what boundaries looked like. Like I didn't know that telling somebody no was actually a good thing. Like I thought it was a bad thing. Oh, you can't say no. You have to just allow, I mean, even bullshit stuff like don't show up at my house without calling, which we talked about. I'm like, that I don't like that shit. So 100% boundaries and boundaries that feel good to you and obviously your partner. Like you have to talk about like what it means. I was actually talking to a girlfriend who does a lot of like couples counseling and she was saying even just like sex in itself can have a different definition depending on who you are. So make sure that you guys talk about sex, what it means, what it looks like, boundaries. And I'm like, and that's just one aspect of a relationship. Like communication, 100% in order to set those boundaries. And it's all about learning too. You set boundaries and maybe that works for you for a couple of years. And then you're like, now I've shifted. Let's look at something else that maybe feels a little bit better now. Or it's just all about ebb and flow, what feels good for you, talking it out with your partner, making sure that you're both on the same page instead of trying to navigate it all by yourself or hoping that they just can read your mind because we know that that does not work
not true.
well.
Exactly. Oh my gosh, you bring really good points. So just to recap, what we're talking about is number one, your partner is not in charge to validate you. And it goes right under the topic of making sure you are whole and in a healthy place before you start a relationship with someone else. Because as you said, it is icing on the cake when your partner compliments you and really truly responds to that love language, which is words of affirmation, which is mine as well. But that cannot be something you solely rely on, because if that's not his love language, it is extremely difficult for that human being to keep that consistent. He might go a week or two and not tell you how beautiful you are. You should still be able to keep it moving.
Right.
So that's a good thing that you bring up. The other thing is boundaries, boundaries, boundaries. They are extremely important, and we don't set them at the beginning of the relationship. At the beginning of the relationship, it's always, everything is just always, you're floating on cloud nine. Everything is great. Oh, I don't want to bring this up because no, let me just wait. But what are you waiting for? These are important topics: sex, money, what makes me happy? What doesn't make me happy? Am I a morning person? Am I not a morning person? What do you like? What don't you like? How do you live? How do I live? All these things are conversations we need to have, and not wait till a year into the relationship and you're just finding out something that you probably should have discussed way in the beginning. That's the time to date, to talk. That's when the communication needs to be as open as possible, not when you're already in and you're like, I didn't know that about you. Why didn't you? You didn't ask? Were you scared to ask? So boundaries is extremely, 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 extremely important. And the other thing is just know exactly what you want and not being afraid to vocalize it.
Yes.
If the relationship is missing something and it's not bringing you joy and things are not okay, bring it up to your partner. And don't be afraid to take a break, to walk away, and to realize if possibly the compatibility is not there, then you both need to be mature enough to say, okay, we need a separation, because it's going to get very hostile and it might even make situations worse for like the feelings that you're having. If you let them fester and you don't pay attention to them, it's going to make things worse. So we had such a great conversation, and I definitely feel it's going to be a takeaway for a woman out there, because, it's just, relationships are not hard. They are not. There are good days, there are bad days, there are great days, there are sad days, there are angry days. There are days where one of you may sleep on the couch. It's just reality. But we don't really see what's happening behind closed doors with people.
Well, and I think that that's such a great point too, is that I think I also went in like with a fairy tale outlook, in the sense of like, now that I'm getting married, I now am going to be so happy and fulfilled, and everything is just going to be so great, that I didn't understand that life is not always great. No matter if you're in a relationship, not in a relationship, like, it's okay to have shit days. It's okay to be sad, and it's okay to be angry, and all of those things. And I think that if I would have accepted that sooner, just in life in general, I would have had a completely different outlook on all of my relationships. Is that it's okay that I don't feel super happy right now. It's totally fine. And it's okay that he doesn't feel super happy right now. And it's also not my job to make him feel super happy. So I think that it just goes hand in hand with just like knowing yourself, feeling comfortable enough to bring up, like you said, bring up anything that you're like, hey, listen, this doesn't feel good to me. Like, how are you feeling about it? Let's talk about it. And then finding some sort of balance, boundary, system that works for you in every single relationship is so different that you just have to navigate it with an open mind as to, this is going to be a challenge, but I'm totally showing up for all of it. And I think that that's just important to remember. And also with your partner as well, like asking them, like, I used to hate when Kurt would like tell me, I didn't bring this up to you because sometimes when I tell you hard things, you act like this.
You
and
have your adult temper tantrum.
Yeah. And I'm like, how dare you say that, right? Going right into that whole thing. And then I'm like, you know what? I need to show up completely open and be like, okay, he has a completely different outlook on life, and business and different things that I can actually come to him and have him give me perspective that I don't have. And so it really is such a great thing to look at your partner as this human is somebody that you love. Like, you chose to have a life with them. You should show up like completely willing to learn and grow. And like, it's a give and take both times, not always like, how can I be fulfilled? But also, how can I show up too and like help you? You know what I mean?
True. And all this needs to be done in a healthy way, because what might be okay for your partner may not be okay for you. And if you guys cannot find a healthy compromise that both doesn't devalue you and doesn't devalue your partner, then that's another thing that we need to
Totally.
strongly consider, because it's not okay just to settle for less when you truly know deep down inside something does not make you happy.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes back to say what you say about expectations. We set expectations, and it's all normally these expectations are mental. So we are mentally already crippling ourselves and saying, well, I expect this person to be this way, this way, this way, this way, this way. And then when that human being fails you, all of a sudden you're completely crushed. But why are you crushed? Let's go dive deep. And what type of expectation did you set for me?
Right.
If we come in saying, listen, maybe sometime at some point in this relationship, you may fail me. You may do something wrong. And we need to know how to approach that and how to handle that. But we don't have these conversations in our relationship. We don't. And we need to have them more. These are not unhealthy conversations to have. These are not topics to avoid. We have to talk about the difficult things. It goes right along the line with death. Mm-hmm. People never want to talk about death until it hits you hard. Yeah. We don't want to talk about our parents passing. We don't want to talk about if something happens to you, I, or anybody in your family. We don't want to discuss it. We completely shy away from it. That goes with relationships. Why don't we ever talk about, hey, listen, honey, what would happen if, I was to cheat, or, we got into a physical altercation, or, I started maybe financially abusing things. We don't have these conversations enough, because everything needs to be cupcakes and ice cream and sweet. But as we end today's podcast, I want to thank you so much for being a guest. I appreciate the conversation we have. It was long, part 1 and part 2.
I loved it. I could talk to you for hours. You create such a great, safe, like the best space. I love it. It truly was my pleasure. Thank you. Thank you.
And no problem. And I'm looking forward to be a guest on yours as well. So you guys stay tuned for that information on the website. But as I always end, and I like to say, love yourself, voice yourself, and be yourself. And until the next podcast, guys, have a great day. Thanks for tuning in to Fanpale Podcast. If you want to continue the conversation or share your takeaways, I want to hear from you. Head on over to the website or join our Facebook community and comment your favorite part of the show or share your thoughts. I want to hear what you have to say. Don't forget to rate and subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. Chat with you next week.